Okay, so today is officially October 1st, and if you are like most language learners I know, you've probably had some really good goals that you set at the beginning of this year, but due to life, due to inconsistency, you fell off the wagon. That's why I will show you in this video the exact 12-week plan that you need in order to hit all of your goals for your languages before 2026. Step 1 consists of 2 parts. Part 1, we are going to do a huge language audit, you guys. So first, that means determining what languages are you learning, or what languages have you been learning this year? And the second one is what resources are effective for us and that we like, and what resources haven't been so effective and that we've probably fallen off of using for a while. For the resources that you've been seeing results from, you enjoy, do keep those handy for when we go into step 2 of this video. However, let's look at the resources that you're not really motivated to use anymore. Before giving them up entirely, ask yourself, can I modify these resources at all? So if I am using Duolingo for about 30 minutes in the morning and it's not working, maybe at night I have more energy and I decide to cut the time down to 15 minutes instead. You can also modify your resources by just how you consume them, right? So if you have been reading a physical book, you can totally listen to the audiobook of that physical book that you have, right? I've seen a lot of people do this with the Harry Potter series, even in other languages. And if you really feel like you need to drop a resource because it's not really effective and you don't really enjoy it, then I would recommend introducing maximum 2 new resources, right? We don't want to overload and overwhelm ourselves. Really think about what resources you want to use by October 5th. That's about 4 or 5 days away from now, just so we can start really fresh with the first full week of October that we have. Now, I am going to be showing you how I modify this plan to my personal language study routine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to concentrate both on Arabic and Spanish. And you'll see that I have already done a language learning audit. I like to use El Kitab, which is a textbook. I also have Lingofont, which is an app I use for vocabulary, Mango Languages, similar to Lingofont, and then Lingua Verna, which is an online resource for reading and vocabulary. For Spanish, it's a little bit more simple since I have a higher level italki for speaking, Baseling, again, more kind of all-inclusive for working on all skills, and then Netflix for listening. Now, I did add some modifications to both of my languages. I decided to actually look up some of the grammar videos that align with the textbook so that I can have more visuals, have the learning be more interactive instead of just reading the textbook the whole time, right? And this goes into how can we modify the resources before we totally let them go, okay? So I added just one modification here. I'm also going to take away Mango Languages and Lingua Verna entirely because I really think that Al Kitab, even though I have been getting a little bit bored from it, has covered a lot of the vocabulary that I need. For Spanish, I am still going to stick with italki and Netflix, but I am going to take away Baseling. I'm going to add a modification of reading novels completely translated into Spanish. And for this, I'm going to specifically add the series of Unfortunate Events, which is one of my favorite book series from my childhood. How about we focus now on making our big language goals, okay? What I'm going to say here is make maximum 2 big language goals for each language you're doing, right? If you're only doing one language, this isn't very relevant. Just pick max 2 big goals. If you're doing anywhere from 2 to 8 languages to whatever, then really set a maximum for your goals as 2. Again, don't try to do it all, right? That's only going to lead to overwhelm. An example of a really solid big language goal is finish an A2 textbook in French. Do 100 days of speaking practice in Arabic. The main tip here is to be as concrete as possible, right? If we aren't taking a language exam, we don't just want to say, hey, I want to reach a B2 in German by the end of this phase, right? Or the end of this year, because we don't actually know what activity is going to get us there, and then we're going to keep on questioning our progress towards actually getting to that mystical sort of B2 that's not really defined. Just ask yourself, right? Looking at the resources that you already have from part 1 of step 1, what activity can you do with those resources, right? What resources in general will get to show you that you have reached the level that you intend to reach? And in what skill or skills do you want to have this resource help you with. So literally write the saying down: by December 31st, 2025, I will, and you can see what I've done here in my own language learning plan. For me, I will reach B1 in MSA Classical Arabic and the Levantine dialect in all 4 skills via finishing Al-Kitab books 1 and 2. For Spanish, I am going to aim to maintain primarily passive enjoyment via finishing the first 3 novels in a series of unfortunate events. I talk a conversation class 2 to 4 times per month, just depending on my energy, and dubbing every Netflix show that I see in Spanish. Okay, so I have just one goal for each of these 2 languages, but again, if you're trying to adapt this to multiple languages, you'll have multiple max 2 goals for each of these plans, okay? Again, really think about the rest of this year. Are you really going to have the time and energy for more than one goal in multiple languages? Do you need to really focus in on just 1 or 2 things? Be honest with yourself with the amount of time and energy that you know that you can dedicate. Step 2 is we are going to break down each of our months into milestones. And this way you can get a really good overview of what to expect before you go into each month. For October, as you probably have realized, we are already doing, right? We're setting the foundation, including our language audit, figuring out our language goals, and now practicing building consistency. And then in steps 3 and 4, we'll decide exactly what activities we are going to stay consistent in. Especially if we haven't really been consistent this year, we're going to build it into staying solid for October. I also want to make a small note here. Consistent does not mean every day, okay? In fact, I'm going to add my own definition of what consistency means right here. I am consistent, aka doing something in my language, 6 days per week only, and then I have 1 rest day, which will be flexible. I'm also planning to take a break from December 20th to the 26th for Christmas, so I really want you to have that in mind. Take a break at some point. And that is going to look different for everyone else because yes, there is a difference between taking strategic rest versus just giving up and continuing being inconsistent like we were in the first half of this year. And ask yourself, what do you want consistency to mean to you given your time and energy for the rest of this year? For November, we are going to push intensity for refining our weak points in our language or languages if we're doing more than 1. If you have been consistent in October, you are definitely going to notice what your weak points are for November that are keeping you from reaching and hitting your language learning goal before December 21st. And then in December, that is our consolidation month, where we get to polish everything that we have learned from October and November. So we're essentially filling in any sort of lingering gaps that we need to do in order to guarantee that we're going to reach our goal. For example, say we have a big language goal for Spanish, finishing our graded reader novel. Let's say in October, you built consistency reading 5 times a week out of the novel. And then for November, you are improving your reading comprehension by studying some of the grammar points that you haven't understood directly from the text. By December, your consolidation will look more like finishing the novel actually, and then maybe even going through the parts again and doing extensive reading where you're really focused more on the actual understanding of every single word, every single grammar concept, instead of just reading for enjoyment and skipping over some parts that you're not sure about, right? Which would be more intensive reading. Now, step 3, we have our weekly planning system. Every Sunday, I want you to stick to writing down 3 weekly actions that you are going to take for the full week that follows. And of course, these weekly actions are going to be tied to your big language goal or goals that you set back in step 1. Be realistic about what activities will fit your time and energy that you have for the rest of this year, okay? This is really essential so we do not burn out. Now, if you do have trouble picking weekly actions, or it makes you nervous to plan everything so far in advance down through 3 months, and or you just get bored with doing the same activities over and over again, then what I have for you here is a cheat sheet, okay? This is going to be an example of my cheat sheet. So I usually brainstorm really any and all activities that have to do with what I like to do in my language to practice it, to immerse in it, etc. So you have a lot of options and room to really personalize this to what you want, to your energy, to your time limits of the day. And it really does add variety to your routine instead of you having to use your study time to basically figure out, what activity do I want to fill my study time with today. Now, I did mention that in November, we are going to increase more of the intensity to really refine our weak points to our goal. So in November, you're even going to see this in my example of how I set my weekly schedule. I mainly stick to medium and high energy activities, but then we'll go back to more low energy activities in December. On Sundays, I always have a reminder of myself to reflect on the previous week. How close am I to my language learning goal? And what are the 3 actions minimum that I'm going to take for this week to get me even closer to this goal? We have high energy, which is red here, high energy activities. We have medium energy activities in yellow, and then low energy activities in blue. So you see I'm keeping Saturday as my one free day, again, because 6 days in a row out of 7 is what I deem as consistent for me. Then I'm just gonna color code these days, right? Because really planning everything out stresses me out, okay? And you can see here on week 4 of December, I've kept that completely blank because that is definitely my type of Christmas break, okay? So again, your calendar can look something like this. And then you can just go to your own cheat sheet chart and pick out what sort of type of activity you want to do on the day of. If you want more details about how to actually create more of a cheat sheet for yourself, I do recommend to sign up for my completely free pre-recorded workshop, which will go into depth about how you can adapt this cheat sheet to your own personalized routine and energy. Let's keep on going to step 4, which I'm going to call this the optional step. This is for if you feel like step 3 is too flexible for you and you need more structure to stay consistent. So if you are going to do step 4, I really recommend doing between 30 to 45 minutes per day per language if you can, right? There are still places that you can be flexible just depending on you. However, as a baseline for what we're starting out with in October, let's really stick to between 30 and 45 minutes, okay? So label the time on your weekly schedule that you want to dedicate to each of your high, medium, low energy activities. You can go even further and split your language activities into sort of blocks, right? So input, which is listening and reading, output, which is speaking and writing, and then review, which is just flashcards, notes, etc. And then dedicate about 10 to 15 minutes each to those if you really do need a structure with how you spend your actual study time, okay? This is our baseline. Usually for me, output is going to take the most energy, so I'm going to put it under my high energy days. I'm gonna always put those at the beginning of the week because I know that's when I start the week with a lot of energy, and then it kind of tapers down. Then doing more input Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then low energy review on Fridays before taking that complete day off. Next, we are going to go to step 5, which is just deciding how are we going to track our progress. Now, I love using the Resilient Language Learner Tracker. I have made it for up to 10 languages. However, you can also do something super basic, use your own tracker, even write down on a physical calendar. Again, you can see in my personal calendar the word reflection, and it is so important to actually sit down with yourself, take a deep breath, not focus on active studying, and think about how you study in the first place, right? Not just how you study the language, but how you are approaching your own language learning process. You might actually have some mental, some logistical, some emotional barriers that you need to work through first in order to stay the most consistent that you can and really finish this 12-week plan out to its finish line, which I love helping language learners with, by the way. So if you do want to get unblocked, I'd love for you to book a free discovery call down below to see if we are a good fit to work together. Okay, so as I said before, we only have 12 weeks left, you guys. That's 3 months that you can, by December 31st, look back and tell yourself, I actually accomplished what I set out to do in 2025. Let's not waste these 12 weeks. Let's make them count. Cannot wait to see you in another video. Make sure to subscribe if you do enjoy this kind of language learning content, and I'll see you in another video very soon.